really strong wind gusts right there.
Over Hazelwood.
Yep, right over the Hazelwood areas Matthew just mentioned. So when you zoom in and you look at these pixels, we're looking at around 66 knots. So we're talking 70+ mile-an-hour wind gusts here, folks. So this isn't just your regular old severe thunderstorm warning, let me sit on the porch and enjoy it. This is a borderline get in a tornado safe place, because straight line wind damage can do as much damage as a weak tornado can, Mark.
And that's a fair statement here. We need to remember that strong tornadoes, it's a whole different animal. But if it's an EF0 or a low-end EF1, I mean, you have to remember that the damage sometimes can resemble what we see during severe thunderstorms. Bryce, let's go over to Storm View HD. Now, I want to track these storms as they're moving across our area. So this is the severe thunderstorm warning here for Bullitt, Nelson, Spencer, and Washington. Before we completely tie in on this one, I want to take this out a little bit wider, because basically now we have severe thunderstorms that cover almost our entire area. Bryce, let's start from top to bottom, because again, if you're in Louisville, obviously we're going to cover, but I want you to know also in Charlestown and points to the north that we have severe thunderstorm warnings here. Do we know what the wind potential here is on the severe thunderstorm warning for Borden, for Charlestown, for the LaGrange area and Bedford?
Yeah, 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, same thing as Louisville.
So we have a widespread area of destructive winds that are now moving through. Let's track each one of these so we can give you an estimate. A couple things to note here. On the western side of your structure, these are going to be westerly winds. So stay away from the western side of the structure. An example would be if you're on the eastern side of the house, you know, if the westerly winds knock out windows, you don't have to worry about that. So the eastern side of your house away from windows is smart. Jeffersonville 2 minutes from now, 7 minutes from now in Charlestown, 17 minutes from now in the New Washington area, 21 minutes from now in LaGrange, and 30 minutes from now in Campbellsburg. That takes us through southern Indiana with 70-mile-an-hour winds, which, remember, are close to hurricane force wind gusts. We now go further south where we've had this destructive severe thunderstorm. So we're going to track this one across the county, but obviously areas like J-Town, like Fern Creek, be prepared. Hurstbourne, Linden, be prepared for 70-mile-an-hour winds. Anchorage, Worthington, Prospect, Goshen into the Crestwood area. Be aware of this in Fern Creek. Be aware of this as we go towards Fisherville, Shelbyville, and Simpsonville. And I notice you're going 65 on these. Are they moving that fast now, Bryce?
Yeah, that is what they have them marked as. We're moving northeast at 65. They're booking it. They're moving quick.
If that doesn't speak to the power of the wind energy, I don't know what. 10 minutes from now in the J-Town area, 7 minutes from now in Middletown, 13 minutes from now in Crestwood, 17 minutes from now in Shelbyville, 28 minutes from now in Lawrenceburg, and 32 minutes from now in the Frankfort area. 70-mile-an-hour winds. These will be roaring. Second thing I want to also do, Bryce, is I want to make sure that we can see this out of Bardstown. This should have just moved through Bardstown. So, Matthew, if you could dial in the Bardstown camera. Bryce, I'm going to grab the Bardstown camera real quickly here just so we could take a look and see what we've got in terms of winds that are moving through. And then this would ultimately go towards around the Simpson area. Again, a location where we have a camera so that we'll be able to get a good sense of what the winds look like as they're moving across the area. So I'm just going to go through my briefly because I've got so much stuff in there and just verify. Let me grab the Bardstown camera so we can see.
Yeah, we've got it.
Oh, you guys got it. Okay.
And also, I mean, moving through the heart of Louisville right now, downtown, we do have some more gusts that are reading in around 70 knots.
That just hit Louisville. Did you guys hear that wind pick up?
Go across the roof.
Those are strong. So those are right now north of the airport near U of L.
71 knots.
71 knots. So we've got 80-mile-an-hour winds right now that are moving towards downtown Louisville. We just hit a horrific wind hit in downtown. We don't know what the extent of that is, but we'll continue to keep a look at it. I'm going to pop up briefly that Louisville camera as well, and so we can go back over to the weather system and show you what we have downtown. I just heard a horrific burst of wind on the building, and that's what it looks like right now from downtown Louisville. I'm going to check our power outages because this is the instantaneous way. As we stand right now, we're sitting at 38. That was the wind gust. I'm going to come back over to you, Matthew. That wind gust that we heard in downtown, that was the 75 to possibly 80 that moved through downtown. Where is that right now?
It's directly over the river at this point, so it's heading into Jeffersonville any moment now. We've already got some more gusts north of Jeffersonville.
And there we go. That's the view outside, Matthew. That's easily north of 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
We're going to be watching those trees. Guys, can we do what I'd like to do here is let's keep that camera up. Those are ferocious.
Yep.
Those are really strong winds coming through Louisville. This is a dangerous thunderstorm. That's why we went live on this. If we could two-box this with radar. I'd like to keep that Louisville camera up here as well. Big Mike, if we can two-box that with our weather system, that would be great. Okay, so Matthew, continue on with what we've got here. And Mike, if you could put on the right there, not radar, but our weather system. That way we can choose. Matthew, again, coming back to you. If you're in Jeff, yeah, that really painfully strong wind gust is heading towards you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's going in, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's already there, because, of course, they're moving at 65 miles per hour. So we just talked about it a minute and a half ago. There's not a lot of ground to cover there across the river. So, yeah, it should be in Jeffersonville as we speak. Clarksville going to be getting these 60-mile-per-hour gusts. Oak Park as well. This is crossing the river. Not to say that Metro Louisville isn't still getting really bad gusty winds. Of course, we see it right there. So,
but, you know, and Matthew, that wind is not the one area. I mean, there's more winds. You can pick up on some of those other ones.
Absolutely.
So pick up a couple locations north of Audubon Park.
There are quite a few north of Audubon Park, between 65 and 68 knots.
So that's about 75.
70. Yep.
And then let's go to Hollow Creek. I mean, let's go down this. Are there any other areas that really concern us?
Closer to the Fern Creek, Hollow Creek area there along Bardstown Road. We've got quite a few that are around 63, 65. 58. So it does weaken the further south you go toward Mount Washington, Bardstown area. Okay. But again, the further north, that's where the strongest winds are really in Jefferson County.
And Bryce, you've been looking at pictures here on our weather pictures computer. We're starting to get reports of damage now. So we're getting concerned. You know, the reason we cut in on this is because our concern has gone up in terms of what we're seeing. Bryce, are you getting any reports of damage having occurred at this point?
I've seen a few pictures that we're trying to get loaded in right now out of the Valley Station area.
They just upgraded it
to 80. They just upgraded to 80.
So this is important to note that Mark was just mentioning here. So this is going to be for parts of southern Indiana. So we're talking Borden, Charlestown, New Washington area, Sellersburg, and heading over to even to Henryville. You guys need to be in your tornado safe place. I mean, there is not a tornado warning, but we're talking destructive winds here, gusting up to around 80 miles an hour as well. And the Louisville's also been upgraded. So the east side of Louisville, I'm talking Middletown, Eastwood, J-Town, St. Matthews, Moreland area, Indian Hills area. You're talking 80-mile-an-hour straight-line wind gusts here, folks. This isn't something that you want to sit outside and look at. Dads, I'm talking to you. This isn't something you want to sit on the porch and watch. This is destructive wind damage. It has a history of already doing damage in the PRP area, in the Valley Station area, with some trees and looks like some large branches down as well. So that's something that we're going to have to continue to keep an eye on here as we continue to watch this move to the east. And you can see it's a little bit calmer now from our studio here in downtown Louisville. But Mark, you were mentioning now that this has been upgraded to a destructive threat. Can you help but kind of explain to the viewers what exactly that entails?
Well, what I want to do, Bryce, is I really want to track this across the area. So a couple things to know is a hurricane force wind gust is 75. So now we're into the 80 range. You need to understand that this can do significant amounts of damage, and this includes all of southern Indiana. So I want to zoom in here, and we're going to take each one of these. We're going to track two of these storms, the one that's on the southern side and the one that's on the northern, keeping in mind that we have an arc of potentially 80-mile-per-hour winds all the way from southern Indiana all the way through Kentucky. And these things are not moving. They are racing to the northeast between 45 and 60 miles an hour. Crestwood, get away from the western side of your home. The reason about the western side is where the winds are coming from. The reason that matters is that can blow out windows. 80s can blow out windows. This is going to be near the Vienna area in 10 minutes, 13 minutes from now in the Scottsburg area, 21 minutes from now in the Saluda area, 25 minutes from now in Republican, and 32 minutes from now in Milton. I want to also track further south along this. And before we track, Bryce, let's just zoom into Louisville, because I really want to pick out some areas that are going to be affected by the 80s. Middletown, Fisherville, Route. You can see all the way towards Fern Creek. You've got to be careful right now. This moving through Metro Louisville, widespread 60+, some 80s. And we heard like a hard hit when it hit the downtown area and moved through. A minute from now in Anchorage, 10 minutes from now in the Crestwood area, Buckner 17 minutes from now, LaGrange 23, and Eminence 32. A couple things I want to note here is 71 Waterston Expressway, 64. These are not roads that you want to be traveling on because of that potential for really strong winds. Bryce, I'm going to come back to you here in a moment, but I want to track just the rest of this line. Again, if you're in Taylorsville or Bloomfield, I know you're concerned as well, and we want to make sure you know what to expect on these storms racing to the northeast. 4 minutes from now in Simpsonville, 10 minutes from now in the Shelbyville area, Lawrenceburg 21 minutes from now, and Frankfort 25. Bryce, you've got a little bit of new information. I saw the assignment desk coming in. I assume we're getting more reports now.
We're getting a lot of reports of power outages, so I'm going to pull up our power outage map, and you can see that that has jumped. On the LG&E map on their website, it's also showing 27,000 without power. So this will continue to get updated. There's the LG&E map that you can see, and obviously this is playing out and verifying these strong 80+ mile-an-hour straight line wind gusts potentially. Our map right now is keeps on climbing continually. Over 8,000 now, and on the LG&E map, it's showing over 27,000.
And now, is that area wide or is that the metro?
I believe that's area wide.
Okay, the 27,000 is area wide.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. So in Louisville, we're talking still almost 8,200 folks without power, Mark.
And those power outage are clustered in a few areas. Hollow Creek has 380 power outages right now. We've got 1,800 without power near the Cherokee Park area. This is an area we always get a lot of outages. And Bryce, you're going to be interested to hear this one. This is where you and Matthew were pinpointing on, but we have power outage right now near Berry Boulevard, near Shively, which is an area you guys were noting earlier. One other location here in Jefferson County with about 1,000 without power is near the Valley Station area. This one also is going to come as, right, no surprise, is that we have a power outage area that's near the West Point. Matthew, you've been on Stormview 3D. This is allowing you to pinpoint where the strongest winds are, and go through some of those bright areas and let us know what you're looking at in terms of intensity.
So in J-Town, just a couple of minutes ago, we did have another uptick in winds. Looked like it was somewhere around 72 to 75 knots. So that would, again, be upwards of about 80 miles per hour. It has come down some, but we're going to get not every single wind gust is going to be measured every single scan, right? We've got a few minutes in between scans, so sometimes you miss them, and that's why this whole line is warned for 80 mile per hour winds. We go north of the rivers, some of these just to the southwest of River Bluff. That's around 67 knots, 65 knots. So in that range of 70 to 75 miles per hour, once again, easily. And that's just with this one scan. In between scans, it may have been higher.
And Matthew, you know, you're mentioning Metro Louisville, and look at that one right now. That one's near the Polo Fields. That one's basically over Middletown. What are you looking at? That one?
69, 67.
77.
Yep.
Okay, and that kind of takes us in Louisville. There are other areas. Let's go south as well. I mean, if you're in Taylorsville, you're like, I'm at her too. So let's take a look. What do we have for around the Taylorsville area and Bardstown?
Significantly lower, but this may be in relation to the radar. Maybe it's a little, further away, so maybe it's not measuring it quite as right. However, I do think that the northern edge of this is probably going to be the strongest wind. So down there near Taylorsville, we're getting a lot of 61, 62s. So that's still easily 65+ mile per hour gusts within this. A lot of them a little bit lower than that. Around 60 mile per hour gusts, but that is severe thunderstorm strength, no doubt about it.
And Bryce has been looking at damage. Matthew's been focused on what's happening now, and Bryce has been focused on what we know has happened. And Bryce, I'm going to put up the power outage map as you talk a little bit about this. And Big Mike, if we could, I don't know if we can punch up weather pics so we can show weather pics on there. Bryce, once we get that, you have been kind of monitoring damages thus far. Tell us what we have seen.
So we've seen a lot of tree damage. Now, some of these are small trees that have been completely toppled. Some are just very large branches. This is from Mark Henderson on Twitter from the Zonton Road by Preston Highway area. You can see that looks like a decent-sized tree that has been completely uprooted and thrown against that other house.
That looks like there's multiple in that shot, too.
Yes, it does. It's fallen through. It looks like a little coop or a little barn. And you can see another one on the deck behind that one. And again, that's Zonton Road, by Preston. And then here's some more damage from large branches from the Valley Station area, kind of as Matthew mentioned, over kind of where all of this started. And Mark, we've had, again, countless almost power outage reports coming out of the Dorsey Lane area. There's multiple power flashes in downtown New Albany right now, coming from folks on Twitter. So again, this is something that we need to take serious. Here's another one from Twitter. Trees down and a transformer blew off. We have a neighbor from down the street's mailbox in our yard. So again, this is something where if you have anything sitting outside, you might need to go and double check after this has moved on through, of course.
Then it is a quick mover.
Yes, it is.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, the problem with this whole thing, and this is what you were talking about all morning long, Bryce, is that this is not a one and done. So there's the initial line, there's a secondary line that's behind this, and I will tell you what's the deal with this secondary line. So traditionally what will happen in a scenario like this is the secondary line would then follow. It would follow the outflow from the primary. So the secondary line near Madisonville should be strongest and probably dive to the south, and then we would get another wave that would come through late in the day and evening, and it will try to occur after the air mass has attempted to recover. That's kind of the scenario that we're looking at. But as we stand right now, we still have a dangerous situation with destructive severe thunderstorm warnings. And again, I'm not trying to overplay or underplay. I'm just giving you it as it is. The warning now for Clark, Henry, and Oldham and Trimble. I don't like to use the word downgrade when you go from 80 to 70 because I don't think that communicates the scenario. I will say this, that we were concerned more about 80s. We're concerned more about 70s now in Clark, Henry, Oldham, and Trimble. And 70-mile-an-hour winds are still considered destructive thunderstorms. They will take down trees, they will take down power outages or power lines, and they will cause power outages. So you need to be concerned still. And also the severe thunderstorm warning now in effect for the eastern part of Jefferson County. Let me just make sure that that hasn't changed. So this one is going to be also for 70-mile-per-hour winds. So this would include Anderson, Nelson, Spencer, Shelby. This would include parts of Bullitt, Jefferson County. This also includes Shelby County, and I'm just going to go further south. Moves into Marion County. There's a ton of counties that are included in these warnings with potentially damaging winds right now moving across our area. I'm going to take a look briefly at our Bardstown camera. This has been one that's been in the thick of it to see what's going on right now, and it doesn't look as intense. If we could go back over to the weather system, guys, so we could control the graphics. There we go. So this is the Bardstown camera right now. Looking in this particular zone, I don't see any tree damage, which I'm encouraged by, but that line now has moved through. It is absolutely racing off to the east, and updates power outages in Louisville sitting at 8,000 still without power. We've seen a small uptick in Bullitt County coming in at 95 without power. And I want to do again, Bryce, let's go through the area. Let's give people an ETA on when these storms are going to be moving through the location where you live. So we're going to start off with the northern, or we'll start southern part of the line, and let's give you an estimate. When's the storm going to be near you with 70-mile-an-hour winds? So 70-mile-an-hour winds, remember, these conceivably at 70 could be close to hurricane strength. Yes, we had warnings for 80 earlier, and Matthew had noted a number of what we call pixels or bins within radar that were showing 80-mile-an-hour winds. So we know that we had extremely strong winds. Shelbyville, 3 minutes from now, be ready. Stay away from the western side of your building. If those 70 or 80 are realized, they would blow out windows on the western side of your building. Second, trees, they go down, are going to go from west to east. If you're on the eastern side of your structure, you would then give yourself some sense of a barrier in that case. 15 minutes from now in the Lawrenceburg area, 19 minutes from now in Frankfort, and 26 minutes from now in the Nicholasville area. Let's move further off to the north and take a look at that portion. Or straight line.
Yes.
We really haven't seen anything that would concern us in terms of tornado. Now, you know, people may not know this, but you did your work prior to here in Dothan, Alabama, and you know, I would say the word I used for Matthew is battle tested. Matthew went through a lot of tornado warnings down there. Obviously, in the last few years in particular, it's been hyperactive in Dixie Alley in that area. We need to also remember that whether it's a tornado or not, if you get 70 or 80-mile-per-hour winds, I think there's this idea, oh, it's just straight line winds, I don't need to be worried. That's just not real.
Yeah, that just means that your tree is going to be blowing in one direction.
Exactly.
Or falling in one direction rather than multiple ways. So, yeah, I've covered well over 24 tornadoes down there in my time in Dothan, and oftentimes we do get instances like this with a huge push of winds with 80 miles per hour. And what I usually am looking for is where one area gets a little bit weaker and one juts out real fast, and that will cause a quick spin up. I have not seen that so far whatsoever. It does look like all winds are moving in the same direction. A couple of little weak spots, but very, very strong. So while it doesn't look like tornadoes are on the table right now, based on what I'm seeing in the present time, 60 to 70 to potentially 80 mile per hour gusts that we've had so far today, that causes damage. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the power outages. We've seen that with the trees that have fallen. We've seen that with the damage that those trees have caused to buildings.
And so what we've got is kind of speckled. So this is really from, you go east to Sellersburg, through LaGrange, south to Shelbyville, Taylorsville, and then into the Springfield, Kentucky area. All of these are showing gates that are over 60 and even 70 miles per hour. Bryce, you're getting new information on damage.
Yeah, so the emergency management in Clark County says power lines are down in the Jeffersonville and Clarksville area. That explains a little bit of that uptick in the power outage map, both in Floyd and heading into Clark County. Now you can see a huge jump.
Wow.
And power outages across Jefferson County. I mean, we're talking almost 31,000 now.
And that's not just Jefferson County. We've got 3,500 in Bullitt County, Oldham County now at 1,860, and over almost 31,000 without power in Metro Louisville. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of people without power in Louisville right now.
I do want to say one thing very quickly. We're looking at it in the chat. So some folks, it's obviously Memorial Day weekend, right? They've got their campers out and that sort of thing. Not a safe place to be. And one that was in somebody's driveway or next to their house got flipped multiple times and thrown into the garage and has severely damaged the house. That's a tough situation to be in. And that's, of course, why we always say with severe thunderstorm warnings, even 60 mile per hour winds, you want to get in a sturdy structure. This was probably 70 plus mile per hour winds that just took that thing.
Where is this, Bryce?
This is down in Grayson County, about a mile and a half north of Litchfield. This is coming from the emergency manager, in Grayson County. So we'd have to get permission to show those on air. But
this is Rough River area.
Yes. So again, Mark kind of talked about this earlier. If you're camping, it's not a good idea.
This is dangerous. I mean, and the fact that the National Weather Service is issuing what we call long fuse warnings. You guys have we've all been doing this for quite a while. These long fuse warnings like this are not issued very frequently, but you can see these are monstrous warnings. And the reason that they're issuing these long fuse, and I just want to give the heads up, is Fayette County in our viewing area? The answer is no. But at the same time, Lexington, this is a storm with a history of producing 70 mile an hour winds. You absolutely must be preparing. And this is heading further east towards Lexington, which then obviously brings up some of the idea and some of our real camping areas. We're getting now into the eastern part of Kentucky where Red River Gorge is. And I have hiked Red River Gorge. I love Red River Gorge, and I know a lot of people go out there. It's exceptional, exceptional place. But there's 70 mile an hour winds. If you have any friends that are in the gorge, let them know, hey guys, there's a storm that has flipped trailers in Louisville into homes. We've got 31,000 people without power. Don't play around with this one. And let your friends know in Lexington. Again, we don't cover Lexington Market, but you know what? We're all part of the same state. Let your friends know there's a storm with a history of destructive winds that is moving towards you. And Matthew, you're looking at that. Some of those winds right now, let's zoom in. They're really, so those pixels near Mount Eden, call some of these out. Mount Eden, Van Buren, what do you see?
From Mount Eden, we've got those knots around 61, so we're talking roughly 70 miles per hour. Down near Van Buren, even higher, 66, so we're getting closer to the 75 mile per hour range in there. I mean, a lot of these even higher to the east, 67, so even closer to 80. So yes, it is warned for 70 mile per hour winds right now, but I do think that there's the possibility of small instances, 75 to 80. I know that the warning up here that covers LaGrange at this point and just east of them, that one is warned for 75 mile per hour gusts.
And I'm going to go back over to the power outage map, and I'm going to do what I can just to kind of call out some locations. Reports of a tree on a home here in Edgewood. This is the neighborhood near Louisville Airport. Wires are down. So this now gets to the point where I need to make a couple of points for you. I'm going to head over to the weather wall. But there's some things to note here. With 31,000 without power in Louisville, 2,000 without power in Oldham, 3,500 without power in Bullitt. If you encounter a power outage, you do not attempt to go near it. You don't try to drive over it. You don't say, you know what, the power's down, that line's dead. No, the power line is not, and you may drive over it, and that may be how you end up. I know it sounds kind of morbid, but in the reality of the world is if you drive over a power line that is still energized, it'll electrocute you, and your likelihood of surviving something like that is low. We need to be careful. We need to avoid down power lines. We need to wait if we have a tree on a power line. We don't take a chainsaw and try to cut that tree off the power line. That can cause arcing. That can cause a really horrific outcome. We do not. We've got to be careful right now. There's 31,000 without power in Louisville, and I suspect the number's going to rise. Let's let the storms get through. We'll assess damage. We've got time for that. The most important thing right now is we keep you and your family safe with widespread power outages now that have occurred across our area. And I'm looking at the power outage map on our side screen, and they are all over the place, all over Louisville. I mean, you've got them from southwest Louisville. You've got them everywhere. Everywhere in Louisville, there's potential power outages. E-Town showing power outages as well. These are all over the place. So these are destructive, damaging winds. We went in live on these because we felt that it was important with that potential for destructive winds to get in. We wanted to make sure that with this scenario, this was elevated. These are not your normal severe thunderstorms. We felt that it was really, really important to get cut in and tell you guys what was happening. We're getting some pictures, and Bryce is trying to get them into the system. This is courtesy Buick on Hurstbourne, showing a sign truck that is completely toppled and flipped. That is...
There you go, Mark.
Okay, so you do have... There it is. So this is Trey Slater that sent this, and I mean... The axle's exposed on this. It's a 2-axle truck. It looks like the truck connected in front. I mean, the power to blow this over is legit. You know, you guys were here. Matthew and Bryce, you were here. You heard that like thump.
Yeah, big thud.
It like thud on the roof when that hard 80 hit. And, you know, with all these power outages, Bryce, there's another one. You're seeing more pictures of damage that's getting reported around the area. You're seeing pictures. What do you got there, Bryce, and what are we getting from our newsroom?
A tree down in Fern Creek on Johnson School Road. So, I mean, again, this is widespread tree damage. And again, as Mark kind of mentioned earlier, you may hear straight line winds. You're like, oh, okay, big deal. It's not a tornado. I ain't got to worry about it. This is why you do need to worry about it. Because God forbid you're in your living room, not in a safe place, when a huge tree in your backyard falls on your home. Just for a personal aspect here, I have a huge maple tree in my backyard. And my wife, who is 9 months pregnant now, is at home, and I told her to go to the basement. When I saw this starting to kind of flare up a little bit, and you know, and I'm glad she did, and I don't regret that.
And you know what, Bryce, I mean, it's worth mentioning this. Sometimes you see this when we're on TV. You'll see somebody step away, pick up the phone, and call. What we're telling other people to do, we're not telling you because we want to wreck your weekend. We're telling you, like you were telling your wife, because you want the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And I told her this morning before I left, I was like, look, if I call you, if I text you, you go to the basement, you know, you've got to be on it. And if my 9-month pregnant wife can do it, then you can do it as well. Head to the basement or a safe place, wherever your tornado safe place is in your home.
But I mean, I think it's important to note that. I mean, we're telling you the same thing that we tell our families, and that is that when there's dangerous thunderstorms moving through, it's really, really important. Matthew, you've been continuing to look at the line. Where are you seeing some of our potentially strongest? And one of the things you can kind of mention also is now we're getting into an area where we're looking really high up in the atmosphere. Yes. So we're approaching a little bit over a half a mile. What's the difference is that may not correlate exactly down to the ground. When it was coming through West Point, it was 200 feet off the ground.
Right, and so it's difficult for winds that are super high up to make it all the way to the ground. So when you're talking a half mile, like what we see over here just to the southeast of Mount Eden, 70.9 knots. That's around or just above 80 miles per hour. That may not make it all the way to the ground. The severe thunderstorm warning has actually expired for a whole lot of our Kentucky counties. We still have some in the northeastern portion of our viewing area, but when you're very close to the radar, as you were talking, Mark, that's where we have winds 100 feet off the ground that were registering well over 70 miles per hour.
Super dangerous.
So we knew that that was making it to the ground. So again, a lot of this area from Scottsburg through LaGrange, through Shelbyville, down toward Lawrenceburg. I know that that's just outside of our viewing area technically, but you know, we do still have plenty of instances of 70+ mile-per-hour winds in here.
And I'm going to come back over to StormView HD so we can see. We're going to show you some of the warnings here that are still in effect as we continue to watch thunderstorms that are moving through our area. All of these are still considerable. So Carroll, Gallatin, Owen, Switzerland, 70-mile-per-hour winds. 70-mile-per-hour winds for Henry, Jefferson County, Oldham, and Trimble County. That is Oldham, Jefferson County of Indiana. Severe thunderstorm warning here continues for Frankfort. You'll also notice Bourbon, Fayette, Jessamine, and Woodford County under severe thunderstorm warnings for 70s. So tell your friends in Lexington, it's coming. It's done a lot of damage in the metro here. We have power outages strewn all over Metro Louisville. Here's the latest showing 3,600 without power in Bullitt County. 3,100 without power in Jefferson.
31,000.
Excuse me, 31,000. Good catch, Matthew. 300 in Oldham, in Floyd, and 400 in Clark. 1,800 in Oldham. Maybe some of these haven't registered as quickly in some of our other counties, so we don't know. But we know that we've had a destructive line of thunderstorms that have moved through our area. Just a reminder, guys, and I mention this a lot, the world has changed. We're able now to get you information not just through your what we call linear TV, your television set. If Bryce told his wife to go to shelters, she doesn't have to lose perspective with television, what's going on. You now can be watching this on the WDRB Plus app. Download that. It'll give you our live TV stream of what's going on. The WDRB News app will have live streaming. You're going to be able to get the information that way. WDRB.com will have live streaming there. You can click on that. And you, remember, can always go to my Facebook page. And my Facebook page will always give you a behind the scenes. So I'll just kind of show you guys what we do here. So you may actually see this sometimes when we're on air. And so what this is, and I can talk to you if you are watching me on Facebook or you're watching me on TV, we have multiple ways that we're able to get information to you. So my Facebook crowd, we have a number of people that are watching here behind the scenes, and then you could be watching through these other methods so that you can know exactly what's going on. So if you ever wonder why that camera's on the side, that's it. But if you're wanting to watch what we refer to as the television style, what you see right here, WDRB Plus, download the app, hugely important, WDRB News app, and you can go to WDRB.com and stream off there. So 70-mile-per-hour winds are ongoing here, Bryce. You've seen a lot of reports of damage, and there's another one. These are not things you always see from straight-line winds.
No, I mean, and this is a big satellite dish on top of Courtesy Buick. And this is around the same area where we saw that tractor trailer tipped over as well. It's coming from the same viewer, Trey Slater. Okay. So again, this seems like the Hurstbourne area over by the Courtesy Buick dealership has had a good amount of sustained wind damage as well, Mo.
And let's go ahead, and we're going to, while Matthew continues to be buried in StormView 3D, he's going to be looking at those wind gates. Matthew, interject if you see something that raises concern. Absolutely. I want to take a look, and we'll go through the, let's stay on StormView HD. I want to do a track again here and talk about where the storms are. Before we zoom, let's speak to Louisville. Show over on round one for Louisville. Show over on round one, but there's still rain and thunderstorms and lightning here. And with damage here, again, I want to emphasize this. Don't go outside and assess right now. There's still lightning in Metro Louisville in the end of all of this. In the end of everything that I do, in the end of, I've been doing this for like 25 years now. All we want is your safety. You know, I don't know if there's people calling the station and complaining about what's on now. I hope not. But we just want your safety. I mean, we want you to enjoy the second part of the holiday weekend. I like where we stand in the middle of next week. Let's play this safe. Let's play it safe. Let's get through this together as we have done for so many years. But you can see when we kind of look at the Metro Louisville, lightning strikes here in the last 30 minutes. So there still have been a number of strikes. Now let's spend more time on where we have our severe. So Weather Service proactively putting out long fuse warnings. Long fuse warnings means they're issuing even before the storm gets into your county. Why? They're that confident that it's going to produce severe. You don't issue long fuse unless you know. And we know. So we've got Deputy 2 minutes from now for 70-mile-per-hour wind. 8 minutes from now in the Madison area. Madison, you've been hit several times in the Madison, Milton area. It's been quite a spring, hasn't it? And so Carrollton, we're 11 minutes from now. Carrollton, be aware. Some of these winds could gust to 70. Would everybody see 70? No, but some could. So be aware of that. New Liberty 18 minutes from now, Sparta 23 minutes from now, and 31 minutes from now in the Warsaw area. As we move southward, we're seeing this starting to breach our counties right now. But since this is heading towards Lexington, and again I want to say, Red River Gorge, this is going to be an exceptionally popular place to be. Let your friends know that there's severe thunderstorms that are about 80 minutes away from Red River Gorge. Do not round on this one. 2 minutes from now, Frankfurt. Sales at around 6 minutes from now. Nicholasville, 14 minutes from now. Lexington, it'll be 21 minutes from now. In Richmond, 29 minutes from now. Severe thunder there, march to the east with potentially 70. I want to look at the southern here briefly, partly because I want to see these are still in our southern counties as the arc occurs. So we're out of most of them, and then here would be Columbia. Okay, so these have now breached our area, but that said, we're still heading towards many of our lakes that are in southeast Kentucky. Bryce, I know there's one over in southeast Kentucky. We've gone through Taylorsville Lake. Do you know which the big one? I don't either. Okay, we're gonna
figure it out.
We'll figure it out. I do go hiking. So
Matthew's on it right now.
I know where Red River Gorge is, but you can see this has now cleared Adair County. Go to the west.
Lake Cumberland.
Cumberland.
There you go.
Matthew
ding, ding,
Boats.
ding.
Matthew Boats. Get the win on that, Matthew. But this is heading towards Cumberland as well. So be aware if you have any friends in Cumberland. Say, guys, a line that's dropped 31,000 people without power in Louisville extends all the way to the Tennessee line. Don't play around with this one. Bryce, let's go to the west because we have a second line that's out there. And this one is also huge. So what's going to happen here traditionally, and this is just a little science lesson because I know we have a lot of science geeks out there like me. But what's happened right now is hurt the air mass. Why? Because it's raining. And rain cools the air. Air is warm and humid. And we're not warm right now because we're raining. Where would it still be warmer? Well, it hasn't rained that much in Russellville, and it certainly hasn't rained that much in Tennessee. So what we would expect here is the most intense portion of this line to arc through Bowling Green and south and take advantage of that fuel. Now, does that mean we don't need to be concerned about the second line on the northern extent of this? Bryce, let's change over to the Evansville radar briefly here, and I just want to look at what's near Evansville. Logic would dictate that it should be weaker because it's moving through an area that has been rain-cooled. Since it has been rain-cooled, one would expect it to be weaker. So you can see we've got more intensity here as we go to the north near Evansville, which would be on a trajectory to get towards Louisville. Let's move this radar, if we could, just a little bit further north. What you're going to notice here is this is primarily rain, and notice most of the lightning strikes are to the south. So this would be weaker now moving forward for Louisville. However, we're going to need to watch another line that moves through during the evening. Bryce, you talked about it all morning. This was a three-wave setup.
Yeah, it is. And as Mark kind of mentioned, we'll be watching this one now, but the storms at Louisville have basically nuked the atmosphere and our storm energy. And I mean, obviously it's left its impact. Louisville now over 34,000 power outages. Bullitt County almost 3,600. Oldham County over 4,300. And even in southern Indiana, Matthew, where we have 300 to 400, almost 500 power outages, you've got a couple reports for more trees down around our area.
Yeah, I do. So down Dixie Highway Hunter's Trace, viewer said that the backyard was knocked over. Big limbs have fallen from the trees. It was a very quick burst of wind, and usually along the leading edge. That's where you get some of your gustiest winds with these storms. That's why the severe thunderstorm warnings have been expired for much of Kentuckiana. Not all of them. We still have some in play up there in Trimble County, Carroll. We've got some Shelby County as well. The northern edge of it still has one. Oldham County. So we do still have some severe thunderstorm warnings in play. Frankfurt underneath one of those as well. Mark, were you pointing out something or?
Just some over to 3D,
okay.
and you know, when you speak to where the most intense is, it jumps out at you super fast.
I would say so. Where you see these orange colors here, just north of Lawrenceburg, in the far eastern portion of Shelby County. We're getting some reports still of upwards of, oh goodness gracious, around 85-mile-per-hour winds, but that's higher in the atmosphere. That's
35?
About, yeah, 4,200 feet.
Okay, 4,200 feet.
So that may not be translating all the way to the ground. It's unlikely that 85-mile-per-hour winds is making it to the ground there.
But at least it's the idea of the energized scenario of the thunderstorms. You know, just so you know, what we live in is the lowest portion of the atmosphere, which we refer to as the friction layer. Since we live in the lowest portion of the atmosphere, the friction layer will, in essence, weaken some of the winds to an extent. When we were really concerned earlier, and Matthew and I mentioned this, but when we were really started to be like, we got to get on TV, is when we saw about 80-mile-per-hour winds, 200 miles above the ground coming out of Valley Station.
200 feet.
Yeah, and about 200 feet above the ground. We knew that we were heading into a different animal here. And with those winds being only a couple hundred feet above the ground versus Lawrenceburg where it's 4,000, we knew that would translate to exceptionally high winds across Metro Louisville, which, as you saw, you know, the power outages, I'll show you one more time. And I'm just
now up to 35 almost.
I mean, these are large power outage numbers. I'm going to just, again, once more time, look at where these are concentrated so I can get a sense on where we have the most power outages here. Elizabethtown reporting 1,200 without power in the Elizabethtown area. I'm just kind of, again, browsing through what we've got. I'm going to come back into Metro Louisville, 5,500 without power around PRP. We've got 900 without power. That would be just east of the PRP area. We've got 4,800 without power in Shively right now. Let's say near north of J-Town, well, no, let's just say near Bardstown Road and Waterston, we've got about 5,700 without power. We've got nearly 9,000 without power right now in Linden. We've got a few without power here near the Fisherville area and Billtown Road, and we've got about 10,000 without power right now in the, let's say around the Fern Creek area. Let's go to Oldham County. We've got 2,100 without power right now, and that's centered around the Goshen area. And then moving into the Taylorsville area, not a huge amount without power right now. You can see showing less than 5. And Mount Washington, actually closer to Shepherdsville, showing about 1,900 without power. So this is a significant power outage scenario that's occurred within our area right now. And a lot of power outages occurring, a lot of people affected here. Down, I say this, you know, it became apparent a couple of days ago that we were going to get a lot of damaging winds. I would say on the positive here for this whole thing, we haven't had any embedded tornadoes thus far. I don't know if you can call that a good or a bad thing because these winds have been so strong, but I do also think that it changes the game sometimes when you do have these tornadoes that are in there and they can elevate the damage in isolated areas. But I think, you know, Bryce, you almost could argue that in this case when they're 80, this may be worse because this covers such a large area.
Yeah, and this is the reason why we went on air to begin with, is because situations like what you see on your screen right now. This is in Middletown, and this is what we're talking about with these live power lines that can be down. These are mature trees and healthy trees that are being uprooted and thrown down onto these power lines, and there's damage everywhere. There's another one in Campbellsville that Troy sent in on Twitter here, and that is a big tree where the entire chunk hasn't been lifted out of the ground, but I mean, it may as well be with these huge branches.
Split.
Lawrenceburg, over toward the eastern half, eastern edge of our viewing area, we see that there's a structure fire there caused by lightning. So it's not just the wind gusts, folks. This is why you need to wait a little bit to go out and assess the damage, is the fact that we still have lightning out there, and lightning has caused multiple structure fires in the past, and obviously with this system. Even yesterday out on a farm, I got a picture that somebody sent in of a bay of hail that got struck by lightning and caught on fire. So again, this is just something that you have to think about when you go out before you start assessing damage. Is the storm out of our area right now? And Matthew has more information with more tree damage.
Yeah, so we do have a tree branch that's partially blocking I-71 going into downtown just after the Waterston ramp is what we're getting
Bryce
here.
is going to pull up traffic so we can take a look at that as well.
That would be good. And so I think that it's going into downtown. We may see it on the other side of the road, but toward downtown, just after Waterston, that trees down, ripped apart. Houses have trees on them and damage as well. Waterston Woods area.
I mean, this is so widespread, the amount of damage.
And the person that gave the report said that they're almost 100% positive that a tornado came through. It doesn't take a tornado to cause this type of tree damage. Widespread. 80-mile-per-hour winds, 70-mile-per-hour winds will do this.
I haven't seen anything to me that has said that tornadoes occurred. We'll see what the surveys find when it's all said and done. But I would just urge it. I think that we tend to focus on this. I've been, you know, as I've found over the course of my career, when there's a lot of people, when there's a lot of damage, there is some resistance sometimes to believe that it's straight line winds. But you know, having done this, and I chased hurricanes for a large portion of my life, I've seen hurricanes that would do things that EF5 tornadoes do. I've seen hurricanes that was in Michael and it debarked trees. So don't underestimate the ability of straight line winds. Whether that wind is rotating or blowing straight, 80 miles an hour is 80 miles an hour is 80 miles an hour. It doesn't matter. It does the same amount of damage. This is not just isolated to Louisville. Bardstown, Kentucky, multiple trees being reported down right now from Leah Oliver. We have damage all over our area from destructive storms that have moved through. I'm going to take it over to Storm View, and I want to take a look, and let's track some of these across the area, Matthew. I'm going to head over to the weather wall.
Southern or northern edge first.
Well, okay, so our southern counties and our southeast counties know that the storms have cleared the initial wave. And you can see as we look, so this is where our viewing area ends in Columbia. I'm not saying there's not severe thunderstorms. I'm just saying they're pulling away from our viewing area in the south. As we start to move towards the middle, Lawrenceburg, which is Anderson County, to Franklin, we still have some arcs of strong thunderstorms. I do want to put a track on this that's moving towards Lexington. Reason is because these storms are going to be affecting the Lexington metro area. Is that part of our viewing area? Technically, no. But you know what? We're all part of the same state. It is important to note that if you have any friends in Lexington, or if they're further east heading towards Red River Gorge on a weekend that is a hyper-popular weekend, if they're in Red River Gorge, tell them you've got 60 minutes, cancel the plans, get back inside. Potentially 70-mile-per-hour winds right now, 1 minute away from the Wilmore area, 6 minutes away from Nicholasville, 14 minutes away from Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington, you've got 15 minutes until potentially 70-mile-per-hour winds are there. And then Richmond, Kentucky, 21 minutes. Now back to our viewing area on the northern side. These do arc back into our area here. I want to take a look and track these northern storms as well that are near the Henry County area further north. These ones are still within our viewing area, and so our severe thunderstorm warnings on the northern extent. This is a strong thunderstorm that extends from Seymour through around North Vernon. This is severe as we go from Madison through Carrollton. So the Carrollton time is now. 70-mile-per-hour winds are still occurring. You need to be away from the western side of your home. In Carrollton, be away from the western side of your home. These winds can blow down trees. If they blow down, they'll go from west to east. We know that. So make sure you stay away from the western side of your house. North Vernon right now, not severe, but 5 minutes from now. In the Campbell area, 14 minutes from now. Warsaw along 71, 21 minutes from now. 23 minutes from now in Johnson, and 31 minutes from now in the Williamstown area. So VV's around 23 minutes from now. Potentially 70-mile-per-hour winds that have done widespread damage within our area. There are trees down everywhere right now, and we need to just give these storms some space. If you're in Louisville, there's still rain, and I just saw a lightning strike here pop on Louisville. So we're still seeing storms moving through Louisville. Bryce, you've been monitoring Chad and some of the damage. Any new information? I assume you're kind of just looking through what's out there. But number one, before I mention that, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, send us those what you see for damage. If you don't, Mark Weinberg, Mark with a C on Facebook. Click like when you get there. Upload your pictures. And I'm on Twitter/X. Mark Weinberg WX, go there, click like, and then start uploading your pictures. And Bryce, we're monitoring those feeds all the time.
Yeah, and it's not just Louisville, folks that are outside Jefferson County. I don't want you to feel left out because I know you guys have damage too. I've seen pictures of damage to mobile homes in the Shepherdsville area, off 44 West, and again down in Bardstown. We didn't see any off of our camera in downtown Bardstown, but there's multiple trees down across neighborhoods in Bardstown. Trampolines flipped over, trees partially down on cars. So this isn't just a Louisville thing.
And when you said a mobile home, do you know the extent of that damage, or did the viewer, can you see from what the viewer sent?
It looks more like it does look like more the base of the old mobile home.
So we're not talking about a mobile home that was collapsed.
No, it has not collapsed. But this is again, on days like today, if you live in a mobile home, you've got to figure out another place to go. You have to, because mobile homes count for a good chunk of storm depths, not only just with straight line winds, but especially with tornadoes. And while it doesn't appear that we've had that in our area, these straight line winds can do just as much damage to these mobile homes, Mark.
So we'll continue to watch, but we're getting picture after picture after picture after picture that's showing widespread damage in our area. We know for sure that we've had widespread damage occur from Oldham, Jefferson, Bullitt County. We've seen a lot of damage here as we look towards Nelson County as well, with a lot of trees that were knocked down. 1,500 without power in Clark. As of right now, Oldham has about 4,300 without power. As it stands right now, there's 34,242 without power in Metro Louisville. And within our viewing area, in the LG&E, the number of people that they serve, LG&E serves 1 million customers across our area, and it's not just viewing area, across our entire area. They're estimating 61,000 without power. That is a large percent without power. For their entire service area, that's 6% of their service area does not have power right now. And in Metro Louisville, obviously we've got a lot of power outages that are occurring right now in Metro Louisville. I just want to county because I'm kind of curious here. Jefferson County for Louisville has a service number of 408,000. So LG&E services about 400,000 in Metro Louisville, and they have 34,000 without power. So approximately 9% of the people that LG&E services in Louisville are without power right now. And understand that there are lots of trees down, so it may take some time to get this all repaired, but be careful. There's power down. There could be some on the roads. Don't attempt to cross those. If you see a tree that's on a power line, that power line is very likely still energized. Don't screw around and play around with that and think, you know, I'm going to get that down. We also hear very frequently that trees fall on people or their car when this happens, and we normally have loss of life in these severe thunderstorms from people that were in their car or walking maybe the dog down the street. Don't make those mistakes on these. These are dangerous storms that continue to produce very strong winds near Frankfort. We're seeing less of an uptick on our northeast side, but we see very strong winds. And Matthew, you're looking at that. The strongest look to be really around the state capital right now, really from Eminence through around Frankfort. And we still have some of those orange in there, which, again, we're talking about 3,500 to 4,200 feet above the ground, but those are still going to translate to likely 70s.
Right. So again, that's around 70 knots. So that would be up to 85 miles per hour at that height, at that level of the atmosphere, about 3,200 to 4,200 feet in the air. So as you said, it doesn't necessarily make it all the way to the ground. This line, the northern edge of it, is moving slower than the southern edge. So it's knocking on Lexington's doorstep. In fact, I think that it is in the western edge of Lexington right now. So if you do have family and friends over in that direction, you can shoot them a text and say, hey, you got just enough time. If you were doing something outside, you could see the clouds on the horizon. Go ahead, head indoors, get to a safe place. Best thing that you can do. Right along the Oldham County and Shelby County line near Eminence, as you said, we do have some very gusty winds there. Now this is behind the leading edge.
So I wonder if that's just the rear inflow jet from the cluster, because we have an MCV, or we basically have a disturbance that's rotating through the northern part of this cluster. I mean, that's really what caused the bow. So I think that's some of that, Matthew, maybe that rear inflow jet.
That's what I was going to ask. So, of course, Mark's a smart guy. We all know that. We can learn a lot from him here at DRB. He's always got the answer for these sort of things. All right, he's got he's usually got an answer for it. How about that? We do have it in motion. Our radar in motion as well. And I just wanted to show you guys where it started a couple of hours ago, further off to the southwest. And roughly an hour to an hour and 10 minutes ago, it was moving into Jefferson County, and that's when it just exploded. And it's amazing. I see this so often. It's crossing over the radar, and that's near Fort Knox. It's crossing over the radar, and it comes out on the other side. It just explodes, and it's almost like God is just giving us, hey, here you go. This is the crazy part that's happening right next to the radar, very close to the ground. And from there, that's when we knew we got to go Facebook Live with this thing, because it is intensifying, and it sure did. And
yeah, you know, that was the moment. We were doing a Facebook Live video, and Matthew and Bryce were kind of looking at Stormview 3D, and I remember looking over, and I saw Bryce come over right after it came past Fort Knox. It didn't look that bad prior to Fort Knox. It goes past Fort Knox and then it went nuts. And the reason that matters is because when you're closer to the radar, you're looking very close to the ground. So when we see indications coming out of Fort Knox of high winds, we get very, very, very worried in Louisville because we know those winds are near ground truth, which obviously in this particular case was. Secondary cluster coming through Evansville right now. So this is going to be number 2. So there's number 1, there's number 2, and there's number 3. Looks like we generated a mesoscale convective vortex or a little low that pushed that line as it went through Louisville. It appears we have a secondary one that's developed to the south. Now, what this means moving forward is, traditionally speaking, the most intense will follow the outflow boundary. So watch where that cluster is going north of the Nashville area. So in that, we would then expect the most intense to cut underneath into this air mass that has been untouched. And if you look at the last couple of frames, it's starting to move more east-west, and when that happens, it normally cold pools and pushes south. We may be seeing that. So I don't necessarily think that second, number 2, is going to generate severe for Louisville. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye on that. And then beyond the immediacy of this, we've got partial clearing near St. Louis. This brings up the obvious question, Bryce, and you've been forecasting this one all morning long. But can we generate fuel for the second or the third line that comes through along the front tonight? What's different is, as you know, there's a difference between fuel that's at the ground that supports much more damaging winds and tornadoes and fuel that's aloft that doesn't generate as much. Which type are we seeing tonight?
So I've gotten a lot of viewer questions about this too. Can we generate enough storm energy again after this moves on through to help this last line that will move through later on this evening? And as Mark was mentioning, there are kind of 2 types of storm energy or CAPE. There's some at the surface and there's some aloft. And a lot of data continues to show and has shown to me all morning long, and we talked about this on WDRB Mornings this morning if you're watching, that a lot of the CAPE or the storm energy that builds in during the afternoon and into the evening for that second line looks elevated. That does help lower our tornado threat. Doesn't mean we can't get one, because a lot of this is going to be turning this evening, and that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But this, as it's moving through right now, is just nuking our atmosphere, and it's taking a lot out of it. And you can see that clearing over near St. Louis there. That's going to help build up storm energy quickly. But our western communities see this first. And that's why, in my opinion, we really need to keep an eye on the southwestern portion of the state heading into this evening. Not that we won't see severe, because I do think we will, as Mark was mentioning earlier, but a lot of that storm energy available this evening may be elevated and may help to at least somewhat suppress our severe this evening. Not eliminate it by any means, but at least suppress it. And you can just see the sheer amount of lightning around our area. And I wanted to get to a couple more damage reports. Around the Charlestown area, we've gotten a lot out of the Charleston, Indiana area. Charleston Square, numerous reports of damage to Charleston, the Hibernia area.
Looks like there's transformers on the road too.
Yep, transformers have fallen down. There's reports of trees on multiple homes in the Charlestown area. No injuries reported, thank goodness. But again, this just goes to show the sheer fact and the sheer kind of impact that this has had around our area so far, Mark, and that it's incredibly widespread, as we've been mentioning for the past about hour or so.
Right, and we still continue with severe thunderstorm warnings here. Let's talk about who is under a severe thunderstorm warning. So we still have a severe thunderstorm warning here for Henry, Jefferson County, Indiana, Oldham, Trimble County, although it's pulling away from that. That's in effect until 1:30. We still, that is, I think, our only warning now that's left over. We also have Carroll County, Gallatin, Owen, and Switzerland for also 70-mile-per-hour winds. But this, at some point, is going to breach our viewing area and pull away. When that happens, we will go back to programming, as we still have a coverage area. This is an update on where we have power outages right now. 2,100 without power in Clark County, 4,300 in Oldham County. Now we've jumped a little more, 36,381 without power in Louisville, 3,552 in Bullitt. And Spencer and Shelby are just not showing as much. It just appears, unfortunately, that the time this storm reached its peak intensity may have unfortunately been as it moved through Louisville.
Of course, the most populated area, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, we're always going to get more reports of damage through Louisville in a sense, partially. But you know, it's very interesting when we're looking at Storm View 3D as I'm kind of peering over Matthew's shoulder over there. Matthew, it's very notable now that inflow jet that's moving into the Owenton area. So these inflow jets actually kind of fuel these damaging lines of thunderstorms. What happens on the northern side is you get a little twirl. We call that a mesoscale convective vortex, and that helps push more wind into the back of the line, arcs it out into the bow, and generate these really, really strong winds. And Matthew, you can actually see that inflow jet right near the eminence area, because look, on the left, it's not intense with thunder and lightning and heavy rain. That's supporting that front edge. That's the wind that is pushing in and bowing out that structure.
Yeah, so as Mark was saying, you don't have a lot of really heavy rain in the eminence area, but the wind is still whipping over there. And you're like, what is going on? The leading edge is beyond us. Well, as you said, that's the inflow helping fuel the storms out ahead. So we still got very gusty winds all up and down along the leading edge, but even behind it in Oldham County, we still have the very breezy conditions. And while it may not be making 80-mile-per-hour winds all the way to the ground, it's gusty, and we could still see some trees that fall. And of course, maybe even a better chance in some of those areas because of the rain that already came through and it saturated the ground.
That's really a problem in itself. Out of everything here, you still think about the fact that we've been inundated. Yes, we've gotten a lot of rain today, but over the last few days, we have had an obscene amounts of rain. This is today so far, about a ½ an inch. Obviously, we're going to get more. And Matthew's point is valid. Obviously, 80s are going to take down trees and power lines, but even 50s right now, because the ground's so saturated, may be able to take down trees and power lines. Bryce, you're seeing more damage still coming in from parts of the area.
Yeah.
We've got some more of that on weather pics, if we can take that. Let us know what we're seeing there.
Yep, so this is on 71 South, right near the Gene Snyder. Chrissy sent this in on Twitter. This is a truck, semi-truck obviously, that is jackknifed from the straight line winds that move through the area. You can see it a little bit on our traffic cameras, but since we've had so much rain, it's hard to see on the camera. So when we look at the traffic map in general, you can start to see just a little bit of slowing here or there from where that truck has ended up jackknifing. And you can see it a little bit better here on the traffic map that Mike Marshall uses.
And if we could pop up the traffic system, I don't know if you guys have that. But Bryce, locating one of those areas, and Bryce, that's where that jackknife truck is.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just, again, 71 South, right before the Gene Snyder. This is right when that storm went on through. So again, even if you're driving on the road, it can be really dangerous, especially for these semis that can tip over pretty easily.
And so,
yeah, exactly. When we look at radar right now, Mark, we can continue to see this push on off to the east, and that's something that Matthew's been watching here for the past few minutes as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a lot going on all morning long, and it started off way to the southwest, has been pushing through the entire area, and I'm kind of looking off to the side here. We've got a monitor that's showing social media pictures from you all. Keep sending those in. Send them to Mark's Facebook page, to his Twitter, X pages as well, because that's going to allow us to see what has gone on through the area and what these folks still have in store. Yes, it is passing through Madison and Bedford, up through Carroll County as well. It's moving out, but it's still very strong, in fact, severe at times. And even behind the leading edge, we still have very gusty winds. So we're tracking it out here. The northern edge moving at 45 miles per hour. It is, again, moving away. The northern edge has been the slower portion, not necessarily the winds in the storm. Those have not been slow. The movement of the actual storm itself. So it's right on Avonburg. It's moving on through Johnson in the next 10 minutes or so. Osgood, a little more than 15 minutes. Those that are in Randolph, Burlington, Florence, a whole lot more time to prepare for this. But we want everybody up there in northern Kentucky that may be taking a little bit of time up there, spending some time with family and friends for Memorial Day weekend. We're giving you that extra advance notice 30 minutes ahead of time. Go ahead and get into your safe place. This has been moving through Lexington over the past few minutes. Cynthiana, it's going to be heading to you guys very shortly. I mean, you're right ahead of the leading edge of this. Warsaw next couple of minutes. Paris, a little more than 10 minutes there. Winchester at 15. So again, the southern edge, much faster, moving at 60 miles per hour, and a whole lot more lightning down in that direction as well. So very powerful as it's moving across I-75. You go up towards Cincinnati, a little bit slower of a mover, still have gusty winds, 60 to 70 miles per hour widespread. And then behind it, that inflow jet helping fuel these storms. Very breezy. Even though you don't see the real heavy rain and the intense lightning, it's still exceptionally breezy there. And then you go south. This is what the models are pointing to yesterday. If you were watching me last night, I said that we're going to get an initial round. That would bring wind damage, less likely to see tornadoes. It still looks like tornado damage. Doesn't matter if it was a straight line or tornado. But yes, 80-mile-per-hour winds with that first round. Now the one behind, is pushing, as Mark said, further south, likely following the outflow boundary. Now I do think that the northern edge and the eastern side of this is going to clip down there in Grayson, Hart, down toward Columbia area, Adair County. I still think that they will get the heavy rain, the lightning, the breezy winds from that, but it won't move through the entire area like our first batch just did. Then behind it, we get some clearing, and that is going to potentially enable the atmosphere to re-energize. Mark?
And that's going to be the challenge here, Bryce, is we have A, number one, coming through, while B is probably not going to produce severe weather in Louisville. It's going to keep clouds and rain. That's going to, it's still in Evansville. I mean, that's going to take 2 hours before it gets through here. I don't know if, somebody asked me when we were going through this, what's the best case scenario? And I struggled to answer that, because the best case scenario, as I noted, still produces severe weather. And the best case scenario produced potentially 80-mile-an-hour winds in Louisville. But if you didn't have this and you allowed the atmosphere to energize and you got high fuel and it was just the line coming through tonight, this would have been a tornado.
Yeah, you're talking about a huge difference. And while, as Mark mentioned, there is damage around our area, that's nothing we want to see. It helps. It does help. It does damage, yes, but we were kind of, we were kind of torn either way, because we were going to get severe weather one way or another. But I think, as Mark mentioned, this will really help at least suppress somewhat of that storm energy from being here at the surface. But then again, I mean, we've got so much clearing over St. Louis right now.
We're going to get severe
Yes,
again.
we will get severe later on tonight. You need to be aware of that. Again, this is possible, just like what we saw just now, again later on tonight. But I do think we really help suppress our tornado risk with this. And you can see the updated power outage map there. Again, 37,000.
New update.
Yeah, almost 38,000 in Jefferson County alone. And even pushing off to the east where those storms, quote unquote, weakened, you've still got multiple power outages. So again, send in your power outage reports to us, to Mark on Twitter. We'll continue to look through those as we continue to see more damage pictures around our area. And as Matthew was kind of mentioning at the wall there, you continue to see these storms down to the south that are going to continue to push further to the south. As Mark was mentioning earlier, that is where the available CAPE, or the available storm energy, is. I like to call these CAPE chasers. So it's going to really, it's almost like these storms have a mind of their own, and they know where the best storm energy available
really is,
Mark.
Isn't it?
And you can see down near Portland, Tennessee, Bowling Green. Yes, they saw storms earlier. It won't be as strong on that northern extent, as Matthew mentioned, either, as it will be on this southern extent where this boundary is setting up along the Kentucky-Tennessee border and just north of Nashville. So it's Memorial Day weekend. It's Sunday. Some people still have to work tomorrow. If you know anybody coming up north or south, really, around the Kentucky-Tennessee border, we're talking Franklin, Kentucky, Portland, moving through parts of Goodlettsville down through Nashville. You need to let them know, if they plan on leaving within the next 30, 45 minutes to an hour from now, that strong storms are still possible along I-65, Mark.
And so for Louisville here, what we're in now is a lull between primary and secondary. Again, this secondary area is going to take some serious fuel out of the atmosphere. Now, that said, if you're asking me, Mark, will you be here later? Yeah. If you're asking me, will Matthew be here later? Yeah. If you're asking me, will Bryce be here later? My answer is no, because I'm going to send him home at some time. He has to get some rest. But we're going to continue to watch. The reason there's 3 here right now is we felt more confident in terms of the intensity of this first line. Matthew and I will be monitoring what occurs during the overnight hours, and we'll continue to make sure that you have a good feel on where we are. As far as warnings are concerned, we don't have a lot left in our viewing area right now. We still have for Scott, we still have for Jefferson County, Indiana, Carroll County, Kentucky, into Henry County, Kentucky. We still have a warning in effect. So that warning here is for 70-mile-per-hour winds, but But the big but on this is you can see that the core is past the Carroll County line. It is past Jefferson County line. And then the non-severe right now is still in the northern part of our area, near around North Vernon. I'm curious what Seymour has been showing. Our camera here, rain sideways. Yep. It reminds me of the Forrest Gump, where there's a lot of different types of rain, and this rain is blowing sideways right now. But very, very windy scenario. We've got some video here that we're going to show you. Oh, wow.
Yep.
So this, in case you're curious, is arcing. And this is in Fairdale. So what happened here is a power line is now touching a tree because either the tree's been blown onto the power line or the power line broke and then is attached to the tree. Since the power line is still live, every flash you see is energy that's being transferred into that tree and catching it on fire. Now, please understand what I'm going to tell you here. If that's not a tree, and that power line's on the road, it's not going to arc with the road. You'll think you've got a dead power line, it's on the road, there's nothing to be concerned about. What happens when you drive over it? Well, now that energy that's in the line, in this energized line, will jump into your car, and now that flicker will now be in you as you're in the car, and it can be the end of the story. I believe it's really important to note that driving over power lines can cause fatalities. We see it. People outside may try to move power lines or take a tree off of it because, you know what, they're like, it's at my house. If I can get this tree off the power line, maybe the power will come back on. I can tell you this much. That's not the way I want my story to end. And so when I see something like this, it just reminds me, when you see power lines, you don't know, Bryce, if they're live. There's nothing there to tell you that this is a live power line or not. LG&E says this, we say it as well. You always have to treat it as though it is live because you don't know.
Yeah, you never know. And again, that's a perfect example of the kind of energy that this is putting out. We see this quite often with trees near power lines, and this is why they're usually trimmed away from them. But in cases like where you have 70, 80 mile per hour winds, it doesn't really matter. In cases like this, it can still happen. Mark, we are still under a tornado watch until 4 o'clock Eastern. I'm interested to see if this will last or if this will be dropped pretty quickly. Now this has moved on through. The SPC may be watching kind of the last portion of this line toward the southern half of our area just to make sure it behaves around our area. But technically we are still included in this. But the severe weather for Louisville has moved on off to the east.
Yeah, and what I would say is going to happen here is this watch at some point is probably going to be trimmed because it's quite clear the secondary portion is going to go south and Louisville won't get it. And then likely what I think will happen, because this is only through 4, we would get another watch that's issued for the overnight. The amazing thing about this is the wind energy is far more favorable for severe and tornadoes tonight. However, you don't have the same amount of fuel out there. It's also, you'll notice that only Jefferson, extreme eastern Jefferson, and extreme eastern Henry County remain under the warnings right now. At some point, we're going to return you back to TV because it makes sense, obviously, with the storms leaving our area. So would I still be concerned about the eastern part of Jefferson County? My answer is no. The storm's exiting Milton and Madison right now. Am I still concerned about the eastern part of Henry County? My answer here is also no. The storm has left, but let's just be reasonable here. Lexington, which is the second most populated city in the state of Kentucky, excuse me, is dealing with severe right now, potentially 70s. And beyond that is now heading towards Red River Gorge. And I just mentioned that because there's going to be a lot of people out camping. And these warnings are long fused. You can see they're issuing them way ahead of the storms. You have got to, if you have anybody that's a friend that's out in Red River Gorge, you have got to get them out. You've got to tell them there is an area that has produced widespread damage and even some destruction here in our area. It's heading towards you. Do not play around with this. And also beyond that, it's heading towards Lake Cumberland in the far southern part of Kentucky, which is a super popular lake. So if you have any friends there, tell them every single part of this line is warned. Get off the lake right now. Get back to your boathouse in a sturdy structure and make sure that you don't end up putting yourself and your friends and your family's life at risk being on a boat with 70-mile-an-hour winds and lightning. I can't think of many things that would be more uncomfortable than that. The secondary line, you'll notice we're not looking, I'm going to show you lightning here. We're not looking at an insane amount of lightning here on the northern part of the line. So I'm going to zoom in on what's our viewing area. So we have 123 lightning strikes over the last 30 minutes within our area. Watch as I edge southward, that then goes to 300. Watch as I continue to edge southward, now that goes to 6. Now that goes to 7. We're seeing quite a few more lightning strikes in the southern part of the line. The reason we're seeing more lightning strikes in the southern part of the line is there is more energy in the southern part of the line. But Matthew, now we go, and I think in Louisville, we're probably now waiting for that secondary line, which is going to be the line that comes through during the overnight hours.
Yep. That
secondary line also still poses potential for severe overnight tonight. And what's going to happen is we'll clear, we'll try to reload the atmosphere. It's going to reload to an extent. You know, I think we're going to have elevated energy. I don't think we'll have as much surface, but elevated energy still can translate and will to damaging winds.
And this is what I mentioned yesterday, that when the winds higher in the atmosphere really start to pick up, that's where the tornado threat will probably increase overnight tonight. So, you know, yesterday in one of my segments I said, could the storms be beneficial to us? And in a sense, we've touched on that. Maybe this has eaten a lot of the energy, but not all of it.
I mean, it's a weird one. You know, how do you say that 80-mile-an-hour winds were good?
Right.
But it's real. I mean, this could have been this could be significantly worse tonight. A lot of people, I'm sure you guys have both been hearing the same thing, but there have been so many people that have been like, is what happened in Oklahoma, is what happened in Texas yesterday, is what happened in Kansas coming in our direction? And the answer is yes and no. The wind energy is, and the damaging winds are, but not the monstrous hail and not the tornadoes as much. You know, Matthew, looking at our risks tonight, you have to say with elevated versus surface being more of the fuel we're going to have, that winds and some level of hail would be the primary threat. And flash flooding, which we kind of haven't talked about a lot, but we have seen a lot of rain in our area. And maybe tonight, even if the winds aren't as strong as what today, because that ground's so saturated, maybe that elevates the potential for damage even with weaker winds.
Yep. So even more trees could be falling down. I do want to point out, we were talking about some of those lakes out there. Laurel River Lake will be the next one up down near London. And that should be, because just south of Somerset is where we've got Lake Cumberland. And so, you know, it's already passed through that area. Now we've got Laurel River Lake folks going to get it next. And as you said, Red River Gorge as well. I think some of our staff had mentioned that they may be heading down in that direction.
I know somebody on the weather team that thought they were going to be going out that way. I'm not going to say who, but I don't think that particular weather person.
It was not any of us three, because we are here.
Say that. I'm not going to say who, but something tells me that they will not be heading. But here's the thing. I mean, tomorrow's a much better day.
Yes.
And I will say this again. You know, I'm going to say this on air because I think it's important. We're not the ones that are giving weather information for the Jack Harlow concert this evening. I would say it's a bad idea to have that concert. I would say it's a bad idea because of lightning. I would say it's a bad idea because the Great Lawn's going to be soaked and it's rainy. I would say it's a bad idea because that stage is basically a parachute and there's potential for damaging winds again. I would say, I don't know if it can be moved into Monday, but in the end of this, all that we do is we look out for the safety of life and property. And I don't think it's worth putting on a concert on these conditions. I just don't. I think that there's still potential for damaging winds and severe, and I will tell you, I still think we're going to get another watch for the overnight hours. Here's an update on our power outages right now. Louisville hasn't made much of a change, still closing in at 38,000, which is about 10% of Louisville is without power. I mean, just chew on that for a moment. 4,300 without power in Oldham County. Bullitt County with 3,500 without power, 2,200 in the Clark County area, 399 in Floyd County. You'll notice that it does appear, and it showed up well on radar, that Bullitt, Jefferson, and Oldham took the biggest hit, where you're like, obviously Jefferson did. Well, here's the thing. Remember, Jefferson has more customers, so you're always going to end up with larger power outage scenarios out of main Jefferson County versus other counties. But Bryce, you've kind of been monitoring as we've kind of trailed the storms moving across our area. noting damage. We've got any new information there?
Yeah, actually, this is from our news director, Jen Keeney. This is out in the Highlands.
That's not a lightning strike.
No, this is from Wires Down. In the Highlands. This is from this first round of storms. And this is our very own news director that's posting this and sending this to us. And this is what's possible.
Out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Bryce, you know, one thing I note most about this is the fire department.
Yep.
Who's trained. Look at how far away they are.
Good point.
They don't want to be anywhere near this. And obviously they could put water on this, but that could cause it to even get worse.
Yep. It
speaks to the idea that when you have an arcing power line, the only thing that can happen is bad things, unless the electric company de-energizes and takes the power out of the area so that they can repair. But nothing good can come by you attempting to go near this area. Again, this is our boss, Jennifer Keeney. Bryce, you've also had, does the Weather Service have any new reports or damage reports or anything continuing on what's going on along this line? I know that we're not the only ones that got damage. It's just the reality here is Louisville is so highly populated that we're always going to get more reports.
Yeah, Oldham County, the emergency management office there in Oldham County mentioned multiple trees down, power lines down are reported, multiple roadways blocked. No other reported damage at this time from Oldham County, but again, we've seen the power outage map there as well, where it's been widespread. It's not just Louisville. It's been a widespread kind of aspect here. And even outside of our viewing area, we're talking Woodford County, even heading over toward Lexington area. We've already gotten damaged pictures from everywhere. Campbellsville, I've seen pictures from the emergency management office there with some trees on some homes in the southern extent of our viewing area. Okay. So this is not just a Louisville kind of thing, but this is for everyone. And you're just kind of seeing our general area here, where, of course, it's more densely populated, so, of course, we're going to have more power outages across our area. In Jefferson County, now over 38,000 of you without power. So, again, if you do not have power, you can always watch us on WDRB.com. You can watch us on the WDRB Plus app as well, and we'll be live there also if you ever lose power in the future, for example, this evening, Mark, as storms begin to roll on through for their second round.
And I'm going to show you here, we're still under warnings until 1:30. Once the warnings expire, we're going to return you back to programming. Understand, we're going to continue to use the full manpower of WDRB to understand what happens. Matthew and I would stay through the evening on these storms. Matthew would have a full update on WDRB News at 10. But here is the current data. So you can see there's the initial arc that moves through. So we have wave number 1 that is near Frankfort. Wave number 2 coming through Louisville. Notice the purples and the pops are down more towards Bowling Green. Wave number 2 is primarily rain. We rain out until about 4. The question is, can we reload? What I want you to see is there's strong southerly winds behind this. Can the atmosphere re-energize? You see it trying to, and you see a secondary area of thunderstorms generating. What immediately captures my attention in this high-resolution model is it's showing some supercells ahead of that main line that are out near the Evansville area. And you can very clearly see it shows hooks on them. If that happens, there could be an initial tornado threat. And then you can see it starts to flash. You can see a main line coming across the northern part of our area between 8 and 10, and that main line is approaching Louisville between 10 and around midnight. You definitely still see some of the purples. Now you'll notice as it goes past Louisville, it's now into our southeast counties around 1 a.m. But I just want to be clear, this is not show over. This is the best high-resolution computer model on planet Earth that continues to show that we are not done yet. Severe thunderstorm warnings remain in effect right now, although it's breached our counties. Bryce, if you could let me know when the Weather Service, if they do decide to let that go. But what I want to do here is, if we could, Matthew, I just want to do a quick tour around our area. Absolutely. And then if those warnings expire at 1:30, we're going to head back to programming. So I want to let Master Control and our production guys know if the warnings expire, we would go back to programming. I think that you're going to see us more later today, just so we're clear. We've got rain right now from Seymour, Salem through Madison. You can see the warning here for Jefferson County. The core has breached the county. You can see here for the eastern part of Henry County, not only has it breached the county, but it's breached the next county. So it is extremely likely they will allow the severe thunderstorm warning to expire. Beyond that, we have more rain and thunderstorms that are moving in. Rain goes from Jasper through around French Lick and Paoli, Tell City, E-Town, Litchfield. We can see that this secondary area, while not as strong for Louisville, is still producing rain. And we hope that this will keep the fuel low enough to keep that severe weather threat under control late. But I'm going to be honest, the wind energy is hellacious tonight, and it is exceptionally favorable for severe weather, including tornadoes. The hope is we can keep the fuel down. If we do, it'll keep the severe or the tornado potential lower, but I don't think that we can keep the severe weather potential out. Damaging winds, I don't think we're going to be able to avoid that tonight. I just don't. We've got thunderstorms right now near around Brandenburg that extend southward just west of E-Town. Be aware, E-Town, more thunderstorms could be moving through, and we're starting to hear more rumbles of thunder across downtown Louisville. Rain and thunderstorms along the western Kentucky Parkway near the Litchfield area. All of this making its march to the east. Much more intense as we go towards Morgantown through around the Hopkinsville area. That's where I think that if this line has the ability to go severe, it would be more likely there. And let's go back to the viewing area, the DMA, and then let's put this into motion here just so we can see what's moving towards Louisville here at 129. There's the primary wave. The secondary wave, while it may not be severe in Louisville, is still going to bring more heavy rain, more thunderstorms. We still have power lines down, and we may have more that come with the severe weather that moves across during the overnight hours again tonight. The warnings will probably expire around 1:30. If they do and are allowed to expire, we would return to programming, but we continue with thunderstorms moving across our area. The main core of the severe is pulling away from our viewing area right now. There's a secondary area that will still have widespread rain and thunderstorms, but right now is non-severe. The severe thunderstorm warnings here, let me just check to see if they have been allowed to expire from the Weather Service at this point right now. Checking to see if the warnings have been allowed to expire, but from what I can see, it does appear, except for a fringe.
Yeah,
so,
this is probably going to be the last bit of it moving out now.
145 is for Carroll County.
Gotcha.
Knowing that it's the National Weather Service Cincy, generally they don't cancel that quickly or that early. So we're going to stay with you then until that warning is canceled or allowed to expire. But if I'm just being forthcoming and transparent, it's over. You can see that the core not only is past the Carrollton area, it's past the other warning that was in effect for Warsaw. So I mean, it's way past our viewing area, but still in effect as it stands right now. So since we're still on, let me just continue to look at what we have. Power outages continuing to go up in Louisville, guys. We're now at the 38,000 without power. Oldham County continues to rise with 4,400. Clark County continues to rise with 2,200, and Bullitt County with 3,557 continuing without power. I'm going to show you a couple things here because we're going to be with you here for a little while longer. This is the tornado risk for our area, Bryce. And what you're noticing is to the south, there's a higher probability.
Yes.
And there are, what are those hatched lines? So explain what that means.
Exactly. So the hatched lines from the National Weather Service are basically used to really highlight a specific area. And in this case, it would be for strong tornadoes. So EF2 and a greater within 25 miles of a point. So anywhere in that little hatched area that's kind of striped down there has about a 10% or greater, this time it's a 10% chance of seeing that within 25 miles. And I believe our wind threat has kind of been, the hatched area at least, has been shifted a little bit to the east along.
And that's because of the damaging. So,
yes.
So I think that part of that, to what you're saying here, is that hatched area on the wind being further east means that's for what just went through.
Yep, exactly.
So, in terms of what's coming, they're not anticipating the same level of extent of destructive winds tonight, but
right.
You know, do we get warnings on this tonight? I mean, I don't know how we don't.
Yeah, same thing. And it's still going to be the #1 threat by far is going to be damaging wind gusts. It may not be as extensive or widespread as what we just saw, but that does not mean that we're not going to see that. That's still the #1 threat, I would say, followed by hail, followed by probably flash flooding, and that 5% as you saw for our area for our tornado risk. It still looks a little bit more likely to the west. As Mark mentioned, some data was showing that supercell potential to our west. Not something we'll watch, much, but here's that excessive rainfall risk from the Weather Prediction Center. And again, a big reason why our southern communities are in this moderate, and this kind of works the same way as a regular severe threat does. This is just for excessive rainfall, so for flooding to be a big issue. While our entire area is in that slight, you jump straight to the moderate, that level 4 out of 5 when you talk about, or 3 out of 4 as you talk about the potential for flooding to our south, because Mark, our southern communities, and anyone watching down there can attest, they've seen a lot of rain over the past few days, if not weeks or so. So this is going to be something, and again, if you're down near the Nolan Lake area, I'm talking to you guys, flooding is going to be an issue as this continues to move through and we get that final round later on this evening.
You know, Nolan, Cumberland, you know, I think the best way to describe this is multifaceted. There are many threats that we have to deal with, and the whole scenario is not completely done as it stands right now. We still have to get through more severe thunderstorms. We still have a lot of power outages that are going on. A quick update, not any real changes here. Nearly 40,000 in Metro Louisville without power. Severe thunderstorms here. Matthew, you've kind of been looking at these, and I'm going to go over to Storm View 3D. There's the line. There's the strongest winds. Carroll County is so far displaced from those strongest winds, and good news, looks like they just lifted that warning.
They just lifted that last warning. Cincinnati's taken us out of it, and National Weather Service Louisville has already declared a while ago that they were not going to be issuing any more warnings with dispatch, but of course there is more to come. I did want to say that we did, and we may have mentioned this earlier, I don't know, along 71, the closure there?
Yes.
Okay, from exit 22 down to South 1st Street.
So,
totally closed.
So yeah, and if you guys can pull the traffic system real quickly, we can show that area, Matthew. So this is not an area where it's slow. This is an area where you can't drive.
Yeah.
So 71 South here, locations you said, Matthew?
From exit 22 over to, I believe it was South 1st Street, I think.
So 22 is going to be the Buckner exit. So you can see 329 right there.
Yeah.
So if you're coming south, I mean, you're going to be rerouted. I don't know what the reroute is. We'll be honest, we're meteorologists, but we do have a traffic system, hence the reason we can show this stuff.
Where's Mike Marshall when you need him?
Yeah, really.
Hopefully he's enjoying the day off, because he better be, or I'm going to be mad. All right, you can see, though, it's closed from the 329 Buckner exit all the way, at least it looks like to me, to around Gene Snyder. My guess, based on what I'm looking at, the reroute, I would assume, is going to be the Gene Snyder North. And then probably over to 42 or 22 rather. I guess that is 42. But again, not sure on that 100%, but we can tell you for sure that it's closed. And I'll take you back over to radar here briefly as we close out our cut in here. We have a severe thunderstorm. We have severe thunderstorm warnings that have moved away from us now. You can see that there are still strong thunderstorms, but they're warned along the Tennessee County line. These are not warned right now in Kentucky. Could we get a warning on these? Not out of the realm of possibility. If we do, Grayson, Hart, maybe Greene, Taylor, and Adair counties we would watch. And then we're going to see a reflare of strong to severe that occurred during the overnight hours. That strong to severe that occurred during the overnight will renew the threat for damaging winds, hail, and even tornadoes. And as always, we will be watching those very closely. We have a tornado watch that remains in effect until 4 p.m., but it is very likely a secondary watch would be necessary. We do not have any severe thunderstorm warnings now in effect for our area anymore. So with that, we appreciate you guys watching here on WDRB. We'll continue to watch these storms. We'll have more likely later tonight. So keep it right here on WDRB for continuing weather updates.
Are just some of the warning signs of a nursing home that's not doing what they're supposed to do. If you suspect your loved one